How's it going, guys? So I wanted to talk a little bit about just kind of this upcoming season, sort of my plans, the deer I'm going to be chasing, sort of my strategy around hunting that particular deer. So to kind of set the scene, this is a permission farm actually that I've had for the last, well, this will be the 5th year, and gotten into the landowner real well. Kind of up to this point have not had any food on this property. There's about 7 acres of tillable to, well, the total is 55, and he's got a house on it and stuff. But basically, up to this point, like I said, haven't had food and never really used corn a lot until about gun season. I would put some corn out just to try and hold the deer, to just increase the chance of not getting shot. And so it's always been a really good farm. We did a lot of timber projects on it, early on. That's how I kind of got to know the landowner, how I got the permission to begin with. But so it's a lot of thick cover on this property, a lot of bedding on this property, and in the past, this property has held a lot more deer than even the bigger properties around it. So I've chased several really good deer on this property, but in 2021, I harvested my target deer that year, big 6x6 deer, and then late season I had just a clean, looked like a 4-year-old 10-point show up, and we guessed him about 150, and he stuck around, which he didn't show up until the middle of January, I believe, and he stayed there until he shedded out. Then picked up one shed, and if you matched him, guess on the spread, probably about 150. Cool, exciting, but again, he didn't show up till late season. Wasn't really my main target deer. I had a bigger deer I was chasing. Roll into the 2022 season, I ended up missing my target deer pretty early on, and I chased him back and forth. He ended up getting shot by the neighbor November 4th. So a good bit of November and into December, I was just kind of scrambling, trying to find a deer to hunt, and just didn't really have a good deer. In the back of my head was thinking that this 10-pointer may come back around again. And I also felt that the deer that I was chasing was very old, very territorial deer, that I felt like he was pushing a lot of the other deer off. And so it did occur to me that with this deer being out of the picture, this 10-point might come back a little bit earlier. And that's exactly what he did. He showed up the day after gun season. He comes in, and he was on my property from there on out. And same core area, basically. There's one main bedding ridge, and that's the only place I could get a picture. I could never get a picture of him coming in and out. There's a rut funnel in the back. I mean, nowhere except for on that ridge. Again, I hunted him when he showed up, sat several times for him, saw him twice, got really close, and finally it was just where he was at is really tough to get to with the bow, and muzzleloader season was right around the corner, so I decided to stay out, give him a week, try and wait until muzzleloader season, then come in, set up a little bit further out, potentially get a shot at this deer. Well, as most of you guys know, in December there we had that extreme cold snap, and he shed both sides during that cold snap, ending up finding it, and he was there, that was a couple days before muzzleloader season opened, so I never got to really hunt him like I was hoping to. So going into the 2023 season, that was sort of my main target deer, and I sort of was mentally preparing for the fact that this deer may not show up until late season again. And so because of that, I talked to the landowner and was able to get permission to finally put some food on this property. So now we have about 3 acres of standing corn. We have, a brassica plot here, and that's about 1 acre. So you got a lot of food up here, and that staged right off the bedding. And I'm hoping, that would be enough to pull him out and potentially keep him on the property longer. But also in the back of my mind was thinking, okay, well, that deer is completely, the older deer that I was chasing in 22 is completely out of the picture. Maybe he kind of slides into this area. It seems whenever a mature deer in this area dies, another one just sort of slips into the same area because it's just a premium habitat right here. And I think that's exactly what's happening. this property is very thick. And so with that, we don't have a lot of velvet deer, almost none actually. Very, very few deer that are mature stay on my property while they have velvet. So as soon as they shed out, they typically come on, and I might get a picture here and there slipping through, that type of thing. But in June, actually, you know what, it may have been July, I'd have to look again. He showed up, and clean 10-pointer through double drop tines. So he's by far his best year. He's a really, really, really good looking deer. And he's either 5 or 6 this year, but either way, he's a mature deer. A lot of character, very cool buck. But just got that one set of pictures. So now the stage is sort of set for that deer to slide in, and I'm hoping, you know, come October he moves in. We can start hunting him a little bit earlier, which would be ideal. But I wouldn't be shocked if it ends up getting to be, you know, late rut, that I would end up, you know, till he finally moves in end of November. But sort of my approach this year has been a little bit different. You know, and I've kind of shown you guys some of that along the way, but I've taken my access from kind of along the property lines, what I have been doing before, and it was just always loud and noisy, and then you had the field. It was just tough to get to the back of the property where this deer was staying at. And so I went this spring and took the time to clear out. There's a drainage that runs the entire length of the property, and this is a pretty steep ravine in most areas, to where it's like, you know, a 10-foot wall above you. So I went through and cleared that entire thing out all the way to the back. And so now I have access all the way back there. I hung a set specifically for the ridge top that he typically beds in, and that's sort of a last ditch, sort of Hail Mary shot. It's right where it needs to be. It's super aggressive. It's right up in there, but you know, worst case scenario, late season, I think that's probably where it's going to happen. But I did have a few sets that I then put in between the bed and the food right off of bedding, in hopes that I can catch them slipping out, heading towards the standing corn, you know, end of October, November. And so that's really what I'm hoping is going to happen, that he moves into this area again and uses it like he's done, but focuses on the food out here. So I'm excited to see sort of how that takes shape and what happens with that deer. Another deer that I'm watching for is a buck I call Baby Crabs. He showed up middle of November last year as well. And I think last year he was only a 3-year-old, but he probably had 140-inch frame as like an 8-point. Just beautiful, beautifully framed deer. Already starting to throw some trash, but you can just tell he's a super young deer. So I'm excited to see what that deer turns into. I'm hoping he, you know, comes back in here and uses his property as well. I don't really plan to hunt that deer unless he turns into something ridiculous. But my main target this year is going to be double drop tine buck, and I'm going to name him Lucky, just because of the fact that, you know, he daylighted so much last year. I could have killed him if he wouldn't have dropped so early. I'm pretty confident. So I'm super excited about this year. It's September 20th. Season's right around the corner. I've got a few deer I'm going to try and get my wife on early on one of my other properties, and it's coming up, guys. And you know, if you're looking at setting your property up, especially in the future, you know, I specifically set this up this year for that deer, and you know, I'll probably set up the property differently for different deer in the future. Say I'm hunting baby crabs the following year. He was doing some different things than what Lucky has been doing, and you know, I'll probably restructure some of the food, restructure some of the stand locations based off of that one deer. So I would encourage you guys, you know, use that history, those older pictures, you know, of years past, seeing what a deer is doing, even as they're 2, 3, 4 years old, that when they hit that 5 years old mark, okay, I've got a lot of history with this deer. I know what he typically does. How can I manipulate my property specifically for that deer and increase the odds of getting that buck in front of my stand? So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. See you guys in the next one.